Good afternoon, everyone. President Biden and Secretary Yellen called me yesterday because obviously they know I'm generally sympathetic with a broad approach to the supplemental. I did make it clear to both of them that we have to have a credible solution to the wide open border in order to get a bill that includes all of the things that I think are important across the Senate floor. I hope they understood the message, so I'm giving it again today in case there's any confusion about how strongly we feel about this. What is our definition? Senator Lindsey Graham and James Langford are going to handle that for us. It includes both asylum and parole. We're talking about a change in policy, not sending money, for example, to New York or to Chicago. So we're very serious about this, and I think it will be difficult to get the package across the floor in the Senate without a credible border solution.
It's exactly 1 month ago today that Hamas attacked Israel, and what was the worst attack on Israel literally in generations. And the administration's principal objective should be to get the hostages out. They should be doing everything they can to make sure that we get Americans here at home safely. And when it comes to how the rest of us here in the United States react to this, I think we have to be really circumspect about ensuring that we tamp down what is a growing tide of anti-Semitism here in the United States, something that we're seeing across our college campuses. The message needs to be clear that there is simply no place for that in this country. Now, with respect to the supplemental the leader just referenced, we do have a border working group led by Senators Langford, Graham, and Cotton, which have come up with some really good suggestions and recommendations on how we can best secure our southern border, which is, by the way, a national security issue. If you don't believe that, just look at the statistics. There have been 3 consecutive years in a row now that have shattered and broken every past record under this current administration, and partly because the Biden administration, essentially after they got into office, decided to abandon all the policies that were working in terms of securing the southern border, and the results speak for themselves. We now are faced with, as I said, the worst, literally worst crisis at our southern border that we've ever seen. So this working group has come up with meaningful suggestions about how to deal with issues like parole, like withholdings, like asylum. They are significant policy changes that will help slow the flow at the southern border. And I would hope that the administration, the Democrats here in the Senate, more broadly in Congress, would sit down and have a conversation with our negotiators on this to make sure that we're doing everything we can to secure a southern border that has become not only a humanitarian crisis, but clearly a national security crisis. Now is the time to fix it, and we have the solution.
Joe Biden has requested $100 billion in the name of national security. Joe Biden has failed the first test of national security. That's because national security starts with border security. And for Republicans, our line in the sand is the Rio Grande. Republicans in the Senate have outlined solutions, effective border policy solutions that will actually stop the flow. And the flow is a flood of illegal immigrants coming into this country. I fully support this proposal, and something like this needs to be included if there's actually going to be a deal. Without it, there is no deal. Now, Joe Biden has a different approach. He wants to throw a lot of money at the problem. Completely ineffective. What do the Democrats want to do? The Democrats want to shovel money into sanctuary cities, New York and Chicago. They want to do direct payments to illegal immigrants once they get into the country. That does nothing to stop the flood of illegal immigrants, and it does nothing to stop the terrorism threats that continue to increase in our country. Republicans have continually gone to the southern border to talk to the Border Patrol. I was there again last week. They tell us Democrats never go to actually see what's happening at the border and never go to talk to the Border Patrol. Democrat senators so rarely go for any purpose, but when they do go, it's to make sure that there is comfort and quick release for illegal immigrants. Nothing to actually stop the flow. Criminals, terrorists are flocking to our border from all around the world. Smugglers bringing fentanyl into this country are responsible for a record number of American deaths. Republican core proposals, core measurement to stop the illegal immigrants coming across the country, into this country, have to be part of any national security bill. Otherwise, there will not be a national security bill.
This past weekend, I was able to go to Arizona on a border trip. So I was able to go to Yuma and speak to the sheriff, to the mayor, to a number of the city councilmen, those that represented various sectors of the human services support systems that were in that local area. And what we heard from them was not only the national security risk that they are seeing at the border, they're also seeing the human impact to their own citizens in that community. The food pantries are completely overrun. The domestic violence shelters are filled with not women and children from that area, but from those migrants that have crossed into those communities. Other shelters for homeless are occupied by migrants that are coming across the border. So we heard devastating stories. The hospital administrator painted a picture where the beds are occupied by illegal migrants into the country, and women from that community that are having babies have to go an hour and a half away because there's no room for them at the hospital where they have paid into the system, paid into taxes. They don't get support from those local entities anymore. So we see all of these constituencies, those that have worked and grown up in the Yuma area, being forced out of their own local supports because migrants have come over and have taken over all of those areas. But while we were there, we went out on the border as well, and we were able to see sections of the wall that had been erected during the Trump presidency. We saw some different type of fencing that had been erected during the Biden presidency, and then we saw unused portions of border material. Okay, so this is material that could be used to build the border. Does anybody see any irony with this picture? So I was at the border. These are the unused sections. And what's surrounding the unused sections to build the wall? It's a fence. It's a fence to protect the unused materials. They're trying to keep people out. It's rather ironic that now we're protecting unused sections of the border wall, but this president is absolutely unwilling to protect our own nation. It is a matter of national security. So, folks, let's take down this fencing so we can get to this fencing and finish the wall.
Well, I think we've heard a lot about the supplemental and support for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan in terms of the weaponry and the armaments that we're sending, particularly to Ukraine. So on Monday, I traveled to Allegheny Ballistics Laboratory in Kaiser, West Virginia, where 1,600 people are making the Gimlers. They're making the Patriots. They're working with the David Sling. And a lot of other armaments, and where it's manufactured there to replenish what we've sent, but also to replenish our own national security. So I think it's important, and the leader has done a great job to emphasize this quite a bit, as have other members, that this supplemental not only goes to help and aid those in Ukraine and Israel if it comes down that way. The other major portion of it will be to replenish our own stockpiles, to replenish our own weapons. So I had the opportunity to see this firsthand, to see how they're ramping up. They began ramping up even a year ago, 2 years ago, built another site to be able to make more, make them quicker, make them more effectively, and make them be as high-tech as possible. So supporting our allies means also supporting our men and women here at home who are working in facilities such as ABL and others around the country to make sure that we're a strong and ready country.
So the idea of a potential terror attack occurring in the United States no longer is just a what if, it is a when. With the war in the Middle East, emboldening violent extremists, and a wide open southern border, we are more and more vulnerable for attacks on our soil right here at home. New numbers just released from October from the southern border show that 1,300 people enter the United States from Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Syria, all classified as sponsors for terror. That's an increase from 1,000 in September. In New York, authorities just 2 weeks ago arrested a man from Senegal who illegally crossed our southern border and is wanted for supporting terrorism. Biden's open border policies allowed him to cross into our country, be processed, and then released into our country. Thank God for our law enforcement who caught him and preempted this terror attack. And listen to this, just on Friday, a Jordanian man with a Palestinian passport was detained on gun charges as a grave danger after talking martyrdom with others. This was reported just 3 days ago in USA Today. This individual was training with weapons and learning how to make explosives, and according to the charges from the judge, this was more than just talk. He was in contact with others who also share a radical mindset. Think what's happening in the Middle East can't happen right here? Think again. Enough is enough. Biden needs to protect our homeland. He needs to protect us on our southern border.
Leader McConnell.